Now, as for the why, believe it or not, we don't really know much about that either. The Greeks themselves had an obsession with explaining origins, be it of cities, temples, sanctuaries, institutions, and they nearly always explained through reference to a mythical narrative. And in fact, there are several mythical narratives for the foundation of the Olympic Games, probably serving different functions for different constituencies. So one variant says that Zeus founded the games to commemorate the victory over his father Kronos and his usurpation of his throne. There's another variant which talks about Heracles. Now, in some versions, this is the famous demigod Heracles. In other cases, it's a completely different Heracles from Crete. But either way, he instituted running races for his brothers. And then there's the variant that is perhaps the best known and was represented on the east pediment of the Temple of Zeus at Olympia, the 5th century temple. And this tells of the arrival in the area of Olympia of a legendary hero called Pelops. And Pelops is seeking the hand in marriage of the princess Hippodamia. But the princess's father, King Oenomaus, always demands of would-be suitors that they compete with him in a chariot race, and if they lose, which they invariably do, then he decapitates them. So Pelops has a slight problem here, and he arranges for Oenomaus's chariot to be sabotaged. They start the race, Oenomaus crashes and is killed, and then Pelops marries the daughter, the princess, and institutes the Olympic Games either as an act of atonement for having murdered his father-in-law or as a celebration of his newfound kingdom. Now, needless to say, modern historians don't give much credence to these stories. In Homer's description in the Iliad of the funeral of Patroclus, Achilles' companion, we hear about athletic events, and there are other early authors who seem to associate races and other athletic events with the funerary rituals that are given to important members of the community. So some historians have suggested that the Olympic Games may have originated out of a series of funerary contests for this legendary hero Pelops, and that the cult of Zeus would have been grafted on to this at a later date. But actually, there's no strong archaeological evidence that Pelops was worshipped earlier than Zeus. Certainly at a later date, he had his own little precinct around what was thought to be his tomb. But the earliest bronze figurines from Olympia seem to depict Zeus rather than Pelops. So we have to assume, I think, that Zeus was worshipped right from the beginning. Remember, the 11th century BCE. I think my own interpretation is a little more mundane. One thing we can say about ancient Greek culture, and especially in the early centuries, is that it was highly competitive. The word agonistic is often used, and it operated along the axes of honor and shame, which means that a man's, and especially an elite man's, status and self-worth was determined by the reputation he held within his community. Now, that might be due to courage on the battlefield, or rhetorical ability in addressing the assembly, or generosity in providing sumptuous feasts, or prowess on the athletic track. And the thing about sanctuaries is that they attract a large number of people for specific events, these festivals. That's especially true of Olympia, which from an early date encouraged people to come from a very wide catchment area. So that offers an expanded, quite an extensive arena in which to prove one's self-worth.
And then explains why Olympia was this gathering place if it could draw from so many different places. Interesting. Mm-hmm. What kind of events did they hold in the ancient Greek Olympics?
So according to Hippias, the earliest event, and certainly this was the event that remains the most prestigious event, was a foot race. It's called the Stadion, from which we get the word stadium, and it was of about 200 meters. And then other events were added in subsequent years, such as the 400 meters, the long distance foot race, wrestling, pentathlon, boxing, the 4-horse chariot race, and perhaps the most famous, the Pankration, which was an extreme combat sport in which the only prohibitions were against biting and gouging out your opponent's eyes.
Okay, wow. We should bring that one back.